Rev up your engines! Okay, looks may be deceiving. There's a 65 Volkswagen fan. You might think, oh, it's all rusted. Hey, this thing is worth serious money. He's doing it over. He just bought it, found it in a barn from the original owners. But he's a smart guy. He's going back to stock. They'd put a Porsche engine in it. He's back to the 35 horsepower original engine that he's done over. Now, as you can see here, this is all original. And you just try to find one of these that looks like this. They're not very easy to find. He also has a sense of humor. I can go slower. He did the engine all over, and he's a smart guy. He messes with these all the time. Anybody that knows these things, the number 3 cylinders on these babies, they overheat because the oil cooler was in the way. These are the oil lines. You move the oil cooler down, so the oil cooler no longer is going to create the problems that these did. He's not going to have any problems with it overheating. And interestingly enough, still 6 volts. Now, people who own these, they didn't care about 0 to 60. That's not an important thing, right? With a 35 horsepower engine, you're not going to be breaking any land speed records, to say the least. And on a windy day, you're lucky if you're going to be able to go. Back in the day, a friend of mine in Toronto had one. He got blown off the highway on a windy day. They're so boxy, and they don't weigh much either. And it just blew it right off the road sideways. So, when these things are new, they want for between $2,100 and $2,500. They didn't cost that much money. Sure, they cost more than the Beetles because they're a lot bigger. Right? But even though they're a lot bigger, the engine's still only 35 horsepower. We're not going to be racing anybody. But if you want to do one of these over stock, a couple years ago, I went to a car show. Guy was from California. He had one of these done completely over. Now, he had the sink and everything in it. I mean, it was beautiful inside, and he modernized it inside with LEDs and stuff. That thing was going for $100,000. I'm not making up stories. $100,000. So, let's say you see an original one like this lying in a barn somewhere. It might behoove you to give an offer. Now, he didn't get this one cheap. The guy was a Volkswagen guy himself. But in the shape that it's in, 10, 15 grand into it, and really did it over, he'd probably triple or quadruple the money he had into the car if he finds somebody who really wants one of these things. So let's take a look inside this old bus, Microbus, whatever you want to call it. Now, things were basic in the German days. I had an Opel, it was my first car. Steering wheel looked kind of like this, only it was more at an angle. And this has a whopping 4 speeds. So did mine. Now, this has modern conveniences. It does have a gas gauge. If you remember the video I did of the old Volkswagen Beetle that came from Maine when I was in Rhode Island, it did not have a gas gauge. It had a stick that he'd open a gas in the front, and he'd put the stick in to see how much gas he had left. At least this is a gas gauge. Now, for those of you who don't know what these are called split bench seats. People used to sit on these things before they had bucket seats. And being a Volkswagen van, there is a lot of room. You can turn them into all kinds of things. Surfers loved them. Stick their surfboards in there, at least if they had a shorty. And a lot of people even put water beds in them. I had a friend in Niagara Falls put a water bed in his. Mind you, it was even slower then with all that water in it, but he liked the extra benefits of having a water bed in his Microbus. Now, if you look at the speedometer, it is really optimistic. That is in kilometers. That's 80 miles an hour. And there's no way this thing would do 80 miles an hour unless you dropped it out of an airplane. Maybe 65 miles an hour, downhill with the wind blowing behind you. Now, as you can see, someone's stolen the radio. It's gone. And we don't need no stinking glove boxes on these things. They had a glove tray here to put all your junk in. And everything's space saving. You can see the headlights. The back of the headlights are here. The metal's there. They didn't want to waste anything. Now, it does have turn signals. And they work. Check it out. Look, they actually work. Although it tells you it's going both ways. That's just how the design was. It's only doing one side. And check this out. It comes with a key. The Germans, as we all know, are very anal people. This gets into the trunk and gets into the gas tank. They're worried about people stealing things. And this is just chock full of safety features. Look, it has 4-way flashers. Now, mind you, There's no airbags, but it did come with seat belts just for your lap. Rusty they may be. They don't work quite as good as 3.1s, but hey, better something than nothing. I certainly wouldn't want to go through this windshield. Let's just say that. And check it out. It has AC. This is the German AC. Air, no air, blowing in. At least the air's blowing from the top, because when you go outside, vents. That's the air vents for air conditioning, which makes it a good thing that the engine and the heat is in the back. Now this is an old one, so it's got barn doors to get in. Sliding doors came later. I kind of like the barn doors myself. Simplicity itself, hinges and latches. Nothing to really break. The only problem is if you fill this thing up with people, it will go even slower. But I gotta say, I don't think any of them will go as slow as my friend with the water bedding is. That thing, we once went to a place in New York State called the Boston Hills, and they're pretty steep roads in those days. 4 of the guys had to get out because it wouldn't make it up the hill. And once it made it to the top of the hill, well, actually 4 guys got out, but one of them was a skinny guy. So he decided, okay, he opened the door, he jumped back in, and it made it with him. But the 3 larger guys, they stayed in the back and had to walk up the hill to make it to the top with a waterbed in it. So while looks might be deceiving, you might think it's falling apart, let's take it for a spin. So here we go. Starts right up. They're very dependable engines. And here we go. No backup camera on this baby. It's actually quite a smooth engine. If you know anything about boxer engines are pretty smooth engines. That's one of the reasons people got them. It actually doesn't ride all that bad. Now, they're going to be a little bit on the bumpy side. It's a boxy vehicle. But you can hear that engine. Hey, it's running perfectly. He did it all over. Seems to me he did a pretty good job. So here we go off the Tobacco Road. We're going to go up the hill. We don't have a waterbed, so I think it's going to make it. It's making it, taking the curve. Look, there's another van. A bit more modern than this, but... And here we go. We're going full throttle. We're really moving. We're probably going 40 miles an hour. It feels like 100. The wind's blowing to the vents. I gotta say, it's a whole lot of fun. It brings back memories. Check it out now, we're really flying. We're doing 55 miles an hour. The telephone poles are just crawling by us. Now, how do you exit one of these things? Well, it's weird. You pull up, nothing happens, and then you whack the door and it comes open. And as you can see, for those short in stature, there's a little step. Look at that. And the windows, they don't roll down. They slide back and forth. And of course, they got the nice ones to give you a little bit more air inside too. Well, it's a good thing that our heat wave left. Yesterday was 97. Today, it's 76. These are great when it's 76 outside. Now, the weird thing is, the early ones did have a problem with the number 3 cylinder burning out because it overheated. Didn't get enough air because the oil cooler was in the way. Well, this one doesn't have that problem. What might sound kind of strange, but these things actually run best on the highway. Because at the highway, they're air cooled. You got a lot of wind blowing through, right? If you got a really old one, you didn't rebuild the engine, they do have a tendency of overheating somewhat when you're idling a lot. Like if you take them in an old parade and just go 5 miles an hour, stop and go. But with the oil cooler, this one probably wouldn't have that problem whatsoever. They say you can't relive the past. Well, you can in one of these. Now, they're not cheap if you're going to get a real one. No. But on the other hand, Volkswagen's just come out with that electric version of these microbuses. They're selling them in Europe. I don't believe they sell them in the United States yet. Now, they say the electric Volkswagen minibus is going to be starting at about 50 grand, and that they're supposed to arrive in the United States sometime in 2024. Now, Volkswagen originally thought they're going to sell them in June. Well, it is September now. Now they're saying the last quarter of 2024, they'll start selling the electric versions of these. I'll tell you what always happens if you're interested in trying to make a little money, and that's this. When they come up with something like that, the nostalgia for these things is probably going to go sky high. The original ones with gasoline engines, because that's what happened when Ford came out with the new Bronco. The old Broncos, woo, their prices skyrocketed. Guys were fixing them, doing all kinds of stuff to them. So maybe before they come out with their electric version, if you can find one of these that still runs and goes, you want to put a little money in it or something, you might find you got yourself a nice little unpolished gem that with a little polish, you can make some serious scratch. So now you know a little bit more about these Volkswagen buses. How certain ones can be extremely popular, and if they're not all rotten away and there's good solid pieces on it, even with a little rust on it, hey, you might have some fun picking one up, fixing it up, and either keeping it or making a good profit. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.